Hey, what's happening everybody? Tarafdar back with a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to discuss the concept of personal credit. I know that lately we've been talking about credit repair myths, but I wanted to discuss a couple of pointers with you guys today that will help you basically elevate your perspective of learning personal credit in a very unique angle. A lot of us go to the credit repair space to perhaps look to get rid of some of the negative items. And we talk about one of the myths where a lot of people enter this space in hopes to get rid of those negative items. But the problem there is that that's essentially a starting point, right? You're not necessarily leveraging what personal credit is meant to be. You're not necessarily leveraging what personal credit is used for, what you need to use it and leverage it for. And so for that specific reason, I think we're going to discuss some of those aspects today and really get you to the perspective where you can take this knowledge, apply it, but also at the same time, be able to use this when you go out there and do your thing and essentially be on the top of your mind when it comes to exactly what the specifics are when it comes to constructing your personal credit reports. What are some of the aspects and elements of how to leverage the knowledge that you have to pretty much choose and selectively be able to qualify for the different types of fundings that you need. One of the complications around personal credit is the aspect of funding the proper way. And individuals always undergo challenges and ask themselves, well, I have a really nice credit score. Why am I getting a very difficult time trying to get approved for financing? Or why am I having a very challenging time when it comes to basically getting out there and, doing what I need to do? And the reason, reality and the reason behind it is because there's just so many different aspects of personal credit that is, kind of intertwined with just outside of your credit reports, right? So for example, historically speaking, banks have a way to sensitively, archive data about consumers, right? And some of the data is an interconnected platform for fraud mitigation and risk prevention, or risk mitigation, fraud prevention, either way. But these systems, they're leveraged internally, and a bank has many different. And this is one of the lessons I want to give you guys is when you're looking at a financial institution, a bank has many different categories of products and services, right? And they have many resources and a tech stack of tools to be able to leverage the information about consumers and use this tech stack to determine a risk or what a client can qualify for, or what are some of the angles in reference to leveraging this knowledge to give you guys the best resources possible. So these tech stacks, the things that I'm talking about with you guys is extremely important because these tools and references that I'm talking about, right? They're going to give you an idea of like, okay, well, if I'm just outside of my credit reports, what exactly are the other tools that the banks leverage and use to mitigate their own financial risk? And how do we know that, we're not part of those interconnected systems? And what exactly do we need to find out so that we're actually in a favorable, sight to the banks, right? In a favorable light to when it comes to underwriting. And this all goes back to historical trends and data. Sometimes you kind of labeled in a specific way because you had some financial issues in the past and you've undergone some challenges in the past where you don't necessarily have a very good solid credit profile, and you've been in a situation where you've been hampered and your ability to build credit was hindered simply because you guys didn't have the knowledge base on what to do when you were younger, and perhaps that education wasn't all the while available altogether. But regardless, the idea here is that now that you have the ability to learn and to educate, I think now you have to go back, right? You got to pull the strings back and you got to figure out like, okay, well, what's the mechanism for me to leverage the information that I need to so that I can, discreetly and confidentially qualify for the funding that I'm looking for, whether it's to get into a home, whether it's to get some car financing. A lot of people up in here trying to build business credit as well to do some turos and leverage that kind of aspect of arbitrage. And albeit that's amazing, and it's a very good way of getting into like the business credit aspect of it. And you still need to understand that personal credit is one of those things that you still absolutely need to do and get right if you're going to go out there and do things like purchasing real estate, purchasing investment property, qualifying for financial institutional mortgages. If you think that you can qualify for mortgages without personal guarantees, specifically using personal credit, you're gravely mistaken. Now, there are companies out there that will extend to you based on your business credit, but what happens is your business has to have a specific threshold of income, like $1 million plus. You have to have a designated portfolio of real estate. And if you're not signing personal guarantee, then they're looking for additional collateral. There is a logic behind underwriting, specifically institutional. If you're looking to get bigger, you need to understand personal credit. You need to understand the game of liquidation analysis, right? Understanding the income, the debt, the way you can handle expenses. Now we're talking math, right? We're talking common sense financial engineering, common sense financial rehabilitation to be able to manage your money the proper way. So all these things are critical to your personal credit journey. So with the institutions and the systems out there, right? Just to go back on that and to pivot back to that discussion, if you have an issue in the past where you defaulted in a financial institution, it could be over like 5 years, 7 years, whatever the case, and you perhaps fixed it through credit repair, and they haven't shown up again because they just don't have financial activity with you, so therefore they're not actively reporting to the bureaus as per compliance and rules. You might think that, oh, that's gone, so I can go back and apply for funding elsewhere, and I just don't go back to that bank, or maybe I'll come back to that bank and get a second chance on getting approved and stuff like that. There are chances where they will give you that kind of money, depending on the size of your default, depending on what the loss was for that specific creditor. You also have to be extremely careful as to like, okay, well, if that would be the case, then if you had accounts with that creditor, right, you have to look at, did you have a checking account? Did it go negative? Was there any checking issues, savings issues, bank-related products issues that may potentially hinder your ability to actually go out there and do what you got to do, right? So if you're not part of that, and if you haven't really thought about like these type of things, and if you defaulted in the past and there's nothing that was cleaned up outside of your credit reports, then regardless if you have an 800 credit score, like these things start to catch up, right? These are risk preventions for institutions and banks, and they're not just going to sit there and let it happen, right? It's just very obvious. So you got to understand that. And if you don't understand that, then I encourage you to think about that, because going forward, right, the way the credit is going to historically change, specifically consumer credit, there's a lot of things that are shifting, and there's a lot of things that you guys need to literally be aware of. And if you're not aware of those things, then you're ignoring the game, and that's going to hurt you, because down the road, the learning curve is going to be much steeper because there's an evolution of things that will happen. So start to educate yourself now and position yourself right away. And keep in mind, right, the personal credit game is a question of understanding liquidation. It's a question of understanding preferential underwriting. It's a question of understanding financial engineering. These three things, okay, is the critical component of what comprises of the future of credit, right? If you're thinking shortcuts, AUs, adding some primary non-essential trade lines, and fixing and removing negative items and burning more bridges, that's not the answer, right? Because end result is, how many more bridges are you going to cross until the point where it's nothing but smoke and disaster and calamity all around you, right? I think that what we need to start shifting towards is enhancing an existing and harvesting existing relationship, or finding new ones to do business with. But if you had historical issues in the past and you're not getting approved, or you have a nice score, but for some reason your ability to borrow is hindered, then my advice and recommendation to you is to start to look at check systems, LexisNexis, third-party reports that have a historical idea about who you are. Those historical reports will give you some sort of feedback on internal tools and resources that banks use to determine underwriting qualification and criteria. If you're not able to get those type of resources and tools, then what's going to happen is you probably will never know what's going on behind the scenes, right? So these critical components, these reports, these check systems, these LexisNexis report, albeit they're extremely large and sizable, it's crucial to have access to that data, because that gives you an idea. Perhaps you forgot about an account and all of a sudden it just went negative and you just never went back because you moved. All these type of things, it's important that you know. And you need to understand the obligation of responsibility there as well, because even though that may have been the issue, what happens is if you go back to the institution and say, look, in the past there was an issue, right now perhaps the person setting up your bank account might not see it, but when you go for applying for funding, that's going to get back picked up. But let's say it was like $150 because of bad checks and stuff like that, and you had a defaulted credit card, then that's fine. But here's the thing, that $150 with a bad check that shut down your primary account back then, or whatever historically, if you were to open a bank account today with the same, and you say, look, I know that I owe you guys $150, I'm going to reopen an account and reconsider that eliminates the idea of underwriting issues and fogginess in the future, because it's unsecured. So they know there are consumers who have the right to default and stuff. But when you open a checking account and your fees are going negative, or you have a bounced check or something, that hurts you more, right? So in the eyes of the bank, if you pay that $150, it doesn't matter if you defaulted on a $5,000 credit card in the past. It's unsecured. They get reinsurance policies and all sorts of stuff to protect them against these type of mitigation. Plus the revenue streams from the fees, the interest that they earn, to the good consumers that are out there that are making sure that they're obliging to their financial obligations. They make a lot more money. So for them, it's worth it to reconsider that strategy. But those are some of the base level things that you have to think about, because if you're going out there and if you're thinking that you can just simply go out and apply and you have 800 credit score and you remove all the negatives from your credit reports and you just add a U's and non-essential primaries or whatever the case, that is the shortcut to success of credit. That's a very limited shortcut. You're using a lot of money and resources to get to a point where you're tapped out, Whereas if that same amount of money and resources be used and leveraged towards obliging with the current and previous creditors that you defaulted on, specifically if you have bank accounts with them, pulling up your LexisNexis check systems report, these type of things is going to get you further and faster and more reliably than ever before compared to all the type of shortcuts and gray area loopholes that you guys will try to exercise. You're just not worth it, right? So my advice to you guys is follow those principles and guidelines if you're going to try to fix your credit, because those are the things that will give you the longest, hitting results and the best type of outcomes possible. And if you're not thinking about that, then I encourage you to do so, because that is the only way out to the future of personal credit and the way you can establish and build those bankable relationships like I always advise you guys to do. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you took this advice to heart, that you're going to follow and implement the steps that I recommended. And again, pull up your check systems and pull up your LexisNexis and pull up all your 3 consumer credit reports from either annualcreditreport.com or from the bureaus directly. That's you're going to get the whole picture there, because yeah, there is times that we use Identity IQ, all sorts of other technical tools to analyze your credit reports and leverage that and use that as a basis to dispute. That's fine. That's a starting point. But the actual information that's with the bureaus themselves and the primary copies of the credit bureau reports, original ones, are the ones that we need to absolutely pay attention to get the clear picture of what's going on, right? So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to destroy and smash that thumbs up button for me. Don't forget to share the video with others of those who can benefit from the information that I shared with you guys. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, and consider sharing this channel with other individuals who want to learn about personal credit. It'll definitely help me out, and I appreciate you guys sincerely. This is definitely your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafdar. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.